This time, I promise, I'm making something I'm actually going to wear, and wear a lot. I'm making a dressing gown. Hello, it's Icy. Yes, that's right. This time, rather than something terribly, terribly historically accurate, Victorian, fancy, no, we're making a dressing gown. And the reason I'm making a dressing gown is because the dressing gown that I made previously is really starting to show its age. So let me show you this fantastic piece of thing that I made probably a good 15 or 16 years ago. And it has been absolutely fabulous. I made this dressing gown because I could not find a dressing gown that lived up to my expectations of what a dressing gown should be. So I made this very deliberately Jedi robe dressing gown a long time ago. It's just polar fleece. It's a single layer of polar fleece. It's all just a big, fairly full A-line skirt, long sleeves, and it's been big patch pockets. It's been wonderful, but it really isn't warm anymore. The polar fleece has lost its polar, so it doesn't actually, or I just feel the cold more, could be either, but it's not actually cutting it anymore. And so what I'm going to do is make a new one. So I have requirements for dressing gowns. Do other people have requirements for dressing gowns? I don't know. Is that just a me thing? It could just be a me thing. So I have a number of requirements for a dressing gown, which is why I made my own. It must go to the floor is the first and actually possibly most important requirement. I mean, it's got to be made out of warm material, sure. We'll have that as a given, but it has to actually go to the floor because there is nothing worse than having cold ankles because your dressing gown isn't long enough. So this one goes to, I'm wearing flat shoes right now and it's basically a centimetre off the floor. Great. So the new one will be at least that long. Maybe even, no, that's probably long enough because if I wear it outside to hang up the washing or something, I don't want it like in the dirt. So that's fine. The sleeves need to be come to the knuckles at least. Maybe the knuckles is fine. A little bit longer is okay because once again, you gotta be able to do this. You gotta be able to snuggle into the dressing gown. What is the point of a beautiful warm dressing gown if you can't snuggle into it? Designed so the sleeves can be folded up out of the way, of course, but unfolded down have to be long enough. Must have a hood. I mean, should we be making dressing robes, dressing gowns without hoods? No, of course not. If it looks vaguely Jedi-like, extra bonus. And it must have, okay. I'm sure this is not everybody's thing with a dressing gown, but for me it is. When you put it on, it must be flattering. I don't want to be wearing stuff around my house even when I'm just here on my own, schlepping around on the computer, that makes me feel like frumpy. I don't need to feel glamorous, but I do need to feel good. And so the dressing gown does actually need to flatter as well. So that means it's got to be cut in at the waist. And yeah, preferably a long, fairly flowy sort of skirt, because that's also good because then it can be wrapped around you. And the other thing I usually do is this gets, once it's opened up, I chuck it on top of the bedspread at nighttime in winter to keep me extra warm, because as mentioned, I get really cold. And pockets, big pockets that are big enough to fit a book in. This was made, yeah, a long time ago, way before I was regularly reading books on my phone. So yeah, it's an essential requirement that the pockets be big enough to fit a paperback in. These are the requirements. This one is this one's fastened with like an overlap and some ties, and that works fine. But I think the new one needs to have a slightly fancier. So I did buy some new material rather than finding thrifted or secondhand for this one, which is kind of understandable. Secondhand robes are not. No, they're usually quite worn by the time they make it to a secondhand shop. So we're going with things. Now there was a sale on, so this was 40% off. So this is not too bad. I think this is called Sherpa fleece. So it's quite fluffy on the outside, and it's got a very fine, like smooth napped surface on the outside. The other polar fleece I was looking at was actually quite a lot thinner than the one that the old dressing gown had been made out of. So I was thinking I was going to get polar fleece and then line it. Ultimately, just buying this and not lining it will work out cheaper than buying 2 layers of fabric. So we did go with this. So yeah. Now, had I made the pattern? No. So I got 4 meters. I probably will need 3.5. Anything that's left over, I'm just going to turn into like a wrap skirt, or like a thing that I can put my feet into when I'm working at the computer, like basically a giant sock or something. So none of the fabric from this will be wasted. It will all go towards making me feel snuggy and warm. I don't know how hard this is going to be to sew. I don't think it'll be too bad, but I suspect I will need to do something along the lines of trim off some of the fluff along the seam edges so that I can sew that together nicely. And the other thing that I wanted to try, which I don't know if it's going to work because I think it'll be quite hard to judge the sewing, but we'll grab some offcuts and we'll have a go, is I wanted to use some of this, the purple piping that I used in the Victorian jacket, because I have so much of it, and some dramatic purple piping on a robe. Sounds wonderful, honestly. Yeah, I think that sounds cool, and I think that is definitely something that I want to do. So, do I have a plan or a pattern yet? No, but we'll go and draw up one of those now. Okay, half an hour later. I thought I had an idea and then the idea changed, so here we go. Let me see this. Pretty good. There we go. Except I need to go here so the mic can hear me. Okay, so it's gonna be vaguely Asian styled in the end. I was kind of hoping to kind of drift it more Victorian, but I think this will be okay. So we have a hood. All of the white stuff is the big Sherpa fleece. The coloured in section, what I'm going to do is I'm going to edge it with like some black drill. So it's going to have like all maroon. I don't think I have enough. So we might just go with black. So edged in black drill. So basically, you know, like a 4 centimeter doubled strip around all of these sections. So at the entrance to the pockets, the sleeve ends all the way around the hood, and that way it gives me somewhere where I can put buttons. So I'm planning to have a button at the waist and a button at the top to hold sort of the top flap over. There'll be, you know, a corresponding flap on the inside. Whether that needs a button or something, I don't know, we'll see. Now, I don't know if that's actually showing up on the camera. There's a thin blue line along the insides of all of this. That's to represent the purple, because I couldn't find a purple pen. That's to represent the purple trim, the piping. Oh my God. So what I need to do is get some experiments to see if I can actually sew the piping onto this, because that might be quite hard. So we'll do some tests and see what happens. So the next step is to actually cut this out. Now this is basically, it's pretty similar to the other dressing gown, so I'm just going to lay the old dressing gown on top of the new material and cut around it pretty much. The sleeves are nominally set in the old dressing gown, and I guess I'll just do that again, but I could possibly make this all one piece and just sort of sew like down across the top of the whole shoulder. We'll have a look. I'll like lay it out and then have a look and see how we go. Now, I do need to take into account the nap of the fabric, so I should be like laying it out. If this is the fabric, the pieces should be laid out this way. Normally, to be efficient for this kind of thing, I just do the dodgy and lay out across the fabric. If I do that, I might be able to get away with that, honestly, especially if I lay them in the same way. So the nap would be wrapped around the dressing gown. As long as I have it wrapped in the same direction, it's probably okay. And it would be a more efficient use of fabric, I think. So I'll have to lay it all out and do some stuff. Now, this is big enough. I'm actually going to have to mark this out on the floor, and I hate crawling around on the floor to do fabric layouts. So, but we'll have to do it. I might be able to lay it down on the floor, pin the old dressing gown to the new fabric, and then move it onto the table and cut it out. That's a possibility. We'll see what happens. But very excitingly, we're on to a new project. This one, can you see? I actually feel encouraged, enthused. Hopefully this will work well. I think if nothing else, even if the purple trim doesn't work, I think it's still going to be a really beautifully warm, snuggy dressing gown that maybe I will not be cold this winter. Let's see. And took longer than expected, as is the vibe for most of the projects at the moment. I don't know why. Just seems to be a thing. Anyway, very pleased with the result. It looks glamorous, and I am here for a glamorous dressing gown. So here. In the end, decided not to go with the hood. I might change my mind later, but what I figured was the hood would spoil this great collar. It was a couple of things that if I couldn't do it again because I cut the fabric and then I made a mistake, but the original sort of seaming took this back collar up to about here, and I thought, that's not high enough. I need to chop that off and then add another collar. So this top section here is added, and it doesn't, like, it's fine, but the vibe of the original was better. That's okay. We learned a lesson. All of this kind of edging around here, gosh, this is messy. This is so terrible. If this was something I was wearing outside the house, I would have redone the whole thing, but it's a dressing gown. It's okay. It's fine. Change the patch pockets to internal pockets. That was a wise move. Looks great. The line is fabulous. I did decide as I was going along that I didn't want any real external seam lines as much as I could avoid it. So I didn't want hemlines because I figured that would kind of break the line. So yeah, everything is edged. All the top edges have got this. I've used that purple piping with just this is just drill, some scrap drill actually that I had to do all of this edging everywhere. The only spot where there's no piping is across the bottom seam because you can't really see it anyway. So, and also this is very long. It's just off the ground in these shoes, which have got like sort of a platform of that. So I left the bottom edge because possibly at some point I might need to replace the, in the same way that long Victorian skirts had a dust catcher that could be replaced. I might need to replace the bottom sort of hem if it gets worn out, which I thought was a sensible idea. So things that I learned, well, a couple of things I learned. So sewing this fabric, weirdly, the best foot to sew this fabric with was my zipper foot. So because it had a flat front, no pointy sections to get caught in these loops of fluffy fabric. So if you decide to sew this kind of Sherpa fabric stuff, yeah, something that's got just a perfectly rounded and or flat front, no spikes. Or even if you tape up your foot to like change the vibe of the front so it does that, I guess that would be okay as well. The piping worked much better than I expected. Yeah, that actually worked great. I was expecting that to be terrible sewing onto this fabric, but no, it was absolutely fine. Trimming flat the edges to take out the volume, very sensible. Probably should have done that before I did some of the seams as opposed to after, but it's fine. It's fine. The entire house was covered with fluff. Just so much, just fluff. I still need to go through later and like vacuum my table where I was doing some of the cutting out because it's just fluff just embedded in like the protective sheets I've got on top of that. Just fluff everywhere. It looked like the lint collector of my dryer exploded on my floor. Partly because it was grey, but just, oh my God, so much fluff. So keep that in mind if you're working with this fabric. Is it warm? Oh, it is so warm. I am actually too warm now while I'm wearing this, but that's great. That's what I'm after. In the winters, I will be wearing this all of the time. I mean, this was accidental because I kind of cut it on the flat, and so I had these diagonal seams here because like this on the fabric. So these little additional triangles, great. It has the added advantage that I can pop these down when I'm typing and keep the backs of my hands warm. Love that. That just worked so great. I bought 4 meters of this initially, and I used at this stage without the hood about 3.25, something like that. Yeah, so I've got about 75 centimeters left. Now I can either use, and a bunch of scraps from kind of the underarm sections. I can use those to either later on make a hood if I decide I do want one. Maybe even a removable one. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. But also possibly like a giant, like mini sleeping bag type assortment, that I can put my feet in under my desk while I'm working. That would work. So yeah, I do have some fabric left that I'll do something with at a later stage. So this project worked out fabulously. I expect to be wearing this dressing gown for the next 10 to 15 years, preferably. It looks glamorous, it looks wonderful, it's extremely warm, which is what I was after. So project done. project done. Next project, as per usual, I've got a couple of things I'm thinking about. I think possibly, I don't know. We'll see what happens. But I would like to say thank you so much for joining me here on YouTube. Have you made a dressing gown before? If you haven't, you know, if you're in the southern hemisphere and heading into winter, might I recommend one? If you're in the northern hemisphere and heading into summer, just keep the thought in the back of your mind. Could be something to make that you will actually use and wear all the time, as opposed to pretty Victorian costumes that have not yet come off the mannequin. Oh no, actually I take it back. I wore the jacket out to dinner. Mr. Icy and I had our 25th wedding anniversary like 2 weeks ago or something, and I wore this, and it looked, I wore it with like skinny pants and a black top, actually no, a purple top. It looked great. It looked so great. So the jacket, absolute winner. So, but yeah, thank you for joining me here on YouTube. You can find me in all of the social places linked below, mostly hanging out on Threads and Mastodon still. So come say hello over there. Thank you for watching. I'm Icy, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.